Hello, and thank you for taking the time to view this webinar on how to prepare for the InSight assessment. If you have a teacher's guide, you can turn to page 4 to see the checklist that Reading Plus provides for you. There is some information that is not provided on this checklist that we think, as your support personnel, is very critical. So Reading Plus InSight Benchmark 1, it's an adaptive assessment. It's going to help personalize instruction in the areas of reading, C-Reader for comprehension, and vocabulary, read around. After readers take the InSight assessment, they're going to choose their first reading comprehension passages, and they're going to work their way through the verification stage in Reading Plus called Startup. Both the InSight assessment and Startup should be done within 1 week. So what do your students need for InSight and Startup? Well, they're going to need some headphones or earbuds for the assessment and the first 1 or 2 comprehension passages in Startup, because they're going to be presented with short instructional videos and they want to be able to listen without disturbing their classmates. So the information I'm going to share now is not on page 4 in your teacher manual. So it's really important that you might take notes, or this PowerPoint presentation is being provided to you by your administration so that you could print out the slides with the notes that are provided, and you may also use it to present the PowerPoint to your students to set them up for success. So Reading Plus recommends that the teacher set aside 30 to 40 minutes for the InSight assessment. Most readers will finish the assessment in about 30 minutes. Usually at the beginning of the year, what we found is a lot of our students don't have the stamina nor the want to take an assessment all in one sitting. So our research really has indicated that readers who complete the InSight assessment in multiple settings, say 2, do better, and the results are more accurate to their ability. So we recommend that the readers do session 1, maybe on day 1, or in maybe the AM of day 1, completing part 1, the motivation inventory, part 2, the vocabulary selection, and just 1 passage in part 3 for the comprehension. And then the next day or later that afternoon, they do session 2 or sitting 2, where they finish the comprehension passages. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these parts of this assessment. So the first part of the InSight assessment is a motivation inventory. It actually measures the student's motivation for reading across 4 different domains. Those specific domains are their intrinsic motivation, self-efficacy, value, and their interest in reading. The second part of the InSight is the most important part of the assessment. The level the reader achieves in this section determines the reading level that they will begin on in part 3 with those comprehension passages. So let's say a student goes in, an 8th grade student goes in and their vocabulary is that of a 10th grader. That's awesome. We're going to start them on a 10th grade passage when it comes to the comprehension passages. Okay? A 3rd grade student could have a vocabulary that of a 1st grader. We would start them on a 1st grade comprehension passage when they get to part 3. The third part, obviously, part 3, the comprehension passage of the InSight assessment, is assessing a reader's silent reading comprehension ability with fluency. These passages have 100 words, 5 comprehension questions. They're short, not long. This assessment is really seeking a performance ceiling for the reader, which is the highest level at which the reader can consistently and successfully demonstrate comprehension at 80% or higher. So while the student's taking the assessment, the teacher should be monitoring, looking at each student's desktop to make sure that they're staying on task. The student may be presented with one of these cautionary messages. If the reader moves too quickly or if they're moving very slowly through the assessment, messages like these will appear on the reader's screen. So the reader will see a red exclamation point or a fire finger if he or she is going through way too quick. Or if they're going through the comprehension passages at an extremely high rate, click, 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 clicking the spacebar too fast. Also, if a reader spends too much idle time before moving to the next page while reading, or before answering a question, they'll see the blue exclamation point or that icy finger. These cautionary messages are designed to remind readers to stay focused and to do their best work. If you as a teacher notice that one or more of the readers is getting these messages, then we suggest that you take in count and have a little chat with them to ensure that they're going to try and do their best. So let's say the assessment is done and you're looking at your screening report. Something to keep in mind, if a reader does not put forth their best effort on the assessment and they perform lower than they had on a previous year, so these are students who've used Reading Plus before, they could be placed at a lower level in the reading comprehension passages when they start their lessons and have more lessons to complete throughout the year as they work towards grade level. So readers who have used Reading Plus the previous school year and are notably lower on this new year's InSight assessment compared to the previous InSight assessments, they will be flagged on your screening report. You will see these red boxes around their scores. You need to know that you're going to have to most likely have a quick data chat with the student. Sometimes it's good just to check their reading orally, have them read a couple sentences to see if they're decoding or not. But if they can read consistently, then they probably didn't put forth their best effort. Be sure to click over here where it says students and print that student's individual assessment report and then reassess them to try the assessment again with more effort. The reason why we're printing the original assessment report is because as soon as you reassess a student to do the assessment again, the previous data is lost. It's also fun to tell the students, the better you do now, the less work you'll have to do later. So how are new students placed? Well, so that you can understand how the program works, we're going to start by looking at how these new readers are placed in the program. We're going to look at this through an example of a 10th grade student. According to the InSight assessment, this student is capable of reading content at an 8th grade level. Oops, I went too fast for you. Okay, however, he or she has a fluency level of a 6th grader, which means he or she is reading at approximately 195 words per minute. The reading rate for a 10th grade student is 232. So the student has a little ways to go. So when the student starts off in the reading component in Reading Plus, they'll be focusing on developing reading fluency skills first. So when we say reading fluency, we're speaking about increasing comprehension-based silent reading rates to a rate that is appropriate for the student as a 10th grader for this example. So we're also talking about developing those unseen and unheard fluency skills that will allow the student to take in text quickly and efficiently. But in order to develop that fluency, we must start the student off on a level at which he or she can be successful. So we're going to start the student off at the 6th grade content level because that's their fluency level. So the 6th grade content level should feel somewhat easy for the student as far as the content, but it will allow the student to develop fluency before the text becomes too difficult. And we work on a fluency first as we build that stamina. We add in those motivational tools, we incorporate vocabulary, they're exposed to the comprehension questions, and ultimately, we want the student to feel successful and confident and get not only 2 grade level skills, but possibly above grade level in Reading Plus. So this is a chart for the norm reading rates. Find the G rate for the grade level you teach. The G rate goal is the norm silent reading rate for readers who are reading closely and carefully with good comprehension on grade level passages. It's important to remind your students, Reading Plus is not a speed reading program. Reading Plus then uses a patent trademarked guided window to improve fluency and stamina so that the student will be able to read grade level text closely and carefully with good comprehension. However, since we're working on efficiency first, they should be able to meet their efficiency rate goal sometimes within the first 16 to 32 lessons. This is what the guided window looks like. This patent-guided window models and develops fluent silent reading behavior. It provides structure and strengthens those ocular muscles by guiding the reader's eyes from left to right across the line of text. It also structures the reader's return sweeps guiding the reader's eyes as they move from one end of the line to the beginning of the next. And the reader gets to see the full screen of text, slightly blurred outside of the guided window. But this helps the reader anchor him or herself virtually or visually and spatially on the page. So that speed of the guided window, it's carefully set to each student's individual reading rate. The reader's G rate will get incrementally faster as the reader earns consecutive strong comprehension scores of 80% or higher. We like to call those powers. And then the student gets the power to choose if they wanted to go a little bit faster or a little bit, two different speeds, you know, a lower speed and a higher speed. We usually recommend that they choose the lowest of the two speeds. This is what we call the independent rate. Nothing moves. During the first 16 to 30 lessons, when the student is working on achieving that goal rate for their fluency, the student is going to receive 7 lessons in that G rate format that we just looked at, and then their 8th lesson will be in this I rate format as like a checkup or quiz, just to see if the practice in the G rate for efficiency and fluency is translating into their independent reading. Once a student is done with the assessment, where they're only seeing the I rate, the independent format, they're going to go through the next part of the program, which is called Startup. This is where they get to try out passages that they've been placed at a level that they've been placed in for the first time, and they get to choose what they want to read about. Step 1 is to verify the student's independent reading rate. So the first passage will be delivered in the I rate format. The first step of Startup will confirm that the reader's reading rate was assessed correctly during that InSight assessment. Once the I rate has been calculated, the reader will receive the next passage in the guided window rate for the very first time. The program will use this passage to verify if the reader will be able to track the text at a comfortable rate to achieve good comprehension before the passages start to count towards assignments. So part 1 of the Startup captures the student's independent reading rate, or I rate. Students are going to read the text selection in a fully independent mode. The program determines the student's word per minute reading rate by timing how long it takes the student to read each page. So they read from top to bottom, click the space bar, and go to the next page. The student knows they're in the startup process because at the bottom of their screen, it will tell them, Step 1, let's get your I rate. Sometimes students have 2 passages that they read in the I rate before they receive the passage presented to them in the guided window for the first time. Step 2 of the startup process says, let's get your G rate. This part of the startup requires students to read a selection using that guided window, which is set at the student's independent rate as determined in part 1 of startup. So students have the opportunities to adjust the rate so that the guided reading rate, or G rate, is set at a rate that is comfortable for the student to begin. Don't you love to read what your choice is, not what someone else recommends? So in Reading Plus, the students also get the power to choose, and we have 8 different interest areas for them to choose from. But it's really critical that we set some expectations for them not to idle or scroll through all the different text and waste time while they're in the classroom. So tell your students, each time that you select to complete a reading lesson, it's critical that you choose your passage within 1 minute, so that you will get started quickly and you will have optimal time to read your passage selection, the passages that you selected closely and carefully for good comprehension. So what is the first 9 weeks of school going to possibly look like for you? Well, week 1 and 2, you probably have not done, or week 1 at least, you won't do much with Reading Plus unless you've decided to tell your students about the program. By week 2, you're ready to set them up for success with this PowerPoint, letting them know what to expect in the InSight assessment, and get them started. So days 1 and 2, once you've started Reading Plus InSight assessment, well, like I said, the assessment takes 1 or 2 days. Then after that, they're going to go through that startup process. Some students have 1 lesson in I rate, 1 lesson in G rate, which is just 2 lessons in startup. Some students have 2 lessons in I rate and 1 lesson in G rate in startup. And every once in a while, a student will need a 4th lesson. They may be presented with 2 lessons in I rate and 2 lessons in G rate. And once startup is complete, the students are ready to do their assignments. So weeks 4 through 9, the remaining 6 weeks of the school year, or of the first 9 weeks, students can be assigned to do 4 of those C-reader comprehension reading lessons a week with the goal of 80% or higher comprehension. And 4 times 6 is 24. So by the end of the first 9 weeks of school, students should have about 24 lessons in. Many students will have already reached their goal norm silent reading rate for their grade level in that time. So Reading Plus does not isolate reading comprehension standards or tasks. Instead, it integrates the physical element of silent reading, which you saw in the guided window, with the reading comprehension tasks, yet it adds an emotional appeal so that the reader improves not only their silent reading skills, but also becomes a more confident reader. And ultimately, they're going to learn to enjoy reading. Of course, when you change how you read, you can change your life. And it's kind of fun to remind students, the better you do now, the less work you'll have to do later. This presentation will get you started with startup. I have some other presentations I will be sending out with what to expect in C-Reader, how to maintain and monitor G rate and I rates while the students are working in the program, different reports to look at. But if you have any questions between now and then, please reach out to me via email or phone. You can reply to one of my emails to get all of my contact information. All right, have a wonderful day and happy start of the new year.